What's up, everybody? I hope you're doing well. Welcome to the extended cut, minimally edited podcast version of this week's episode, where we are going to just dabble and dip our toes into the wild and scary land of marketing your practice with AI. I know. No, I know. Really, I made clear, even in a very recent episode, that I'm quite allergic to using AI in my life. I just don't like how I feel when I use AI. But we're in a land where more and more potential clients are asking AI to recommend potential therapists to them. In my mind, I thought SEO is still working for me. My practice is still full. I'm allergic to AI, so I'm just gonna not even touch marketing my practice through AI. And I kind of came to peace with all of that until I realized that many of the potential clients who are now contacting me have found my practice through AI. So that's what I mean by saying this is uncharted territory, kind of, but not, but kind of yes. Because as it turns out, my therapy practice is getting recommended to folks through AI searches, even though I'm not interacting with AI or doing anything in particular to try to optimize my practice for AI. So once I learned that potential clients are finding me through AI-based recommendations, I realized it was time for me to, at a minimum, educate myself a little bit about how this is operating. And if I choose, I can see if there are ways that I can optimize my practice to show up in AI search queries. So full disclaimer, I'm just starting to learn about this. I am not coming at this as an expert. However, I've noticed that most of the spaces that are teaching about having your therapy practice show up for AI have a paywall to learn about that. So at the very least, I can share with you what I'm learning and discovering as I go, and it's free. So I'm a little nervous getting into this episode since we're diving into a land that is new to me. Maybe see this episode less like I'm inviting you into my hometown and I'm giving you a grand tour, and more like we're traveling to a brand new country that neither of us knows anything about and just exploring together. And that's what we're doing with AI right now. Okay, so before we dive into optimizing your practice to show up for AI, let me first just kind of set the scene. What do I even mean when I say that potential clients are finding me through AI searches? Anyone listening who doesn't use AI like me might be confused what that even means. So I decided to try it out. Since I am located in San Diego, California, and I specialize in working with marginalized and misunderstood Christians, especially folks who also identify as LGBTQ, I opened ChatGPT and I asked it to recommend an LGBTQ affirming Christian therapist in San Diego. Because that's what I do, and I'm hoping that if somebody were to type a similar search query, whether into Google search or into ChatGPT, I would love for my practice to show up on that list. So I did this query in ChatGPT this morning before filming, and lo and behold, I was happily surprised to see my practice show up first. Here's what ChatGPT says in response to this question. Here's a highly recommended therapist in San Diego who is intentionally LGBTQ affirming and Christian friendly. Affirming Christian Counseling. That's me. That's the name of my practice. And then it shows a few pictures that, as I'm looking at these 3 photos, I believe they're all pulled from my Google business profile. Let me pause here for a second before I keep showing you ChatGPT's response to this query. As I'm looking at pieces of information it's put up about my therapy practice, or if, let's say, it's showing you, it's recommending somebody else's therapy practice, I'm wanting to see where it's pulling its information from, because that might give us some clues about, where we can focus on if we're wanting to emphasize our practice showing up in AI search results. And just looking at these 3 photos that ChatGPT pulled up to showcase my practice, I believe it pulled all 3 of these photos from Google Business Profile, which +1 for Google Business Profile. I used to offer a training for optimizing your Google Business Profile for SEO, and it needs some updating, so I took it down, but clearly, if you do nothing else, it could be worthwhile to set up your Google Business Profile put a couple of pictures and your credentials, and ChatGPT is clearly pulling from that at least sometimes, or in this case. For those who are listening to the podcast version and not watching along, the 3 photos that it's showing are one big photo of my logo, and then a headshot of me, which, goodness, it's from 2020. I actually got some new headshots last summer, and I just haven't updated them onto my website, so that's a reminder to me that I need to update my headshots. And then it's a photo of my building, which this is my clue that it pulled these pictures from my Google business profile, because I have no photos of my office building on my actual website. But Google business profile is tied to Google Maps. So I believe that it's pulling this photo from Google Street View on Google Maps. So with that in mind, let's read what else ChatGPT says about my practice and see if we can kind of locate where it might be gathering this information from. So bullet points, it says therapist, Dr. Marie Fang, licensed clinical psychologist with my license number, located at with my address. And then it shows where it found this information, which is great. Thank you, ChatGPT, for adding that feature. And it's saying the primary place it's getting this information is from my practice's website. So great. It has 3 links and they're all different pages from my therapy practice's website. So that's a win. It's getting information from our websites directly. The next bullet says services noted, quote, LGBTQ plus affirming therapy, including help with integrating faith, sexuality, gender identity, and navigating church/family dynamics. And again, it is linking to my therapist website as far as the source that it's citing for where it found that information. The next bullet says, specifically states she is staunchly LGBTQ plus affirming and does not offer conversion therapy. Again, linking to my website for that source. The next bullet says, also offers support for faith deconstruction, ministry burnout, and therapists in training. Again, linking to my website as its source. And the last bullet says she has a background growing up in a conservative evangelical context and has firsthand experience reconciling faith and sexual/gender identity, which can be especially relevant for clients navigating both. Again, referencing my website as its source for that information. So just looking at these first bullet points, it's clearly pulling information directly from our website and even directly quoting some of that information that it thinks is going to align with this person's search, ChatGPT search. Okay, and then it goes on to say why she might be a strong fit. If you identify as Christian or want a therapist who understands faith and LGBTQ, this practice explicitly welcomes both identities. If you felt tension between your faith community and your identity, this is a space that encourages integration rather than conflict. If you are dealing with issues like ministry burnout, church trauma, faith shifts, or LGBTQ matters, she lists those as specialties. So it's essentially taking things that I've listed on my website, all of this is accurate, and kind of re-summarizing it and saying, this is why I think this therapist could be a good recommendation for this query. And then it goes on with some recommendations as far as things to check or ask about before booking, confirm her availability, things like that. So now it's like ChatGPT offering its 2 cents rather than pulling things from my website. Okay, so I wanted to share that with you for 2 reasons. One, if you've never done an AI ChatGPT query in your life, now you can see how somebody might be recommended a specific therapy practice through an AI search. And second, I wanted to start gathering some information about what is ChatGPT using to pull from? And it's showing us already a few clues. Clearly, my website is giving it a lot of information. My Google business profile is where it's pulling my pictures from, at least. And I do find it interesting at the beginning, it says, here's a highly recommended therapist in San Diego. And it doesn't cite why it's using that language, highly recommended therapist. I don't tend to emphasize things like leaving a review for my practice and things like that. So somehow it's drawing this conclusion that I'm highly recommended, and I don't know where it's pulling that from, but that's an interesting thing that it says. Once I realized that clients are finding me through AI queries when I'm not using AI at all to market my practice, I realized that you can strategically market your practice for AI without using AI, except maybe to do some of this initial research, like seeing if your practice is getting recommended already through an AI search query like this. I think this completely makes sense, and we're going to only keep moving in this direction because clients are going to have more and more specific details in their search query. What I mean is, I think people are getting a lot more specific in what they're looking for, that they might not even just be typing in like anxiety therapist San Diego. I mean, even that query I just gave had some more details to it, like a Christian and LGBTQ affirming therapist in San Diego. Like that's 3 different things in one query, but someone could also add in things like gender preferences or therapeutic modalities or, any number of things. And so as potential clients are adding in more and more details in a search like this for what they're looking for in a therapist, they're looking for that like very tailored response, which is much harder to do with like the old school traditional Google searches, where it couldn't necessarily take in all of that long information and give you like the best fit of a result. Okay, now even though obviously I said this is like uncharted territory for me, I did obviously look some things up before I hit record, did some learning about what's going on with AI, how does it determine who to recommend when somebody asks for a therapist in an AI search, and what sorts of things can we do to help optimize our practices to show up for the appropriate search queries in AI. So one thing I learned that I think just saw kind of validated in my own therapy practice showing up in this search query is that AI systems tend to pull from publicly available content, such as things that you have written on your website, directory listings, so that could be like Psychology Today, Google Business Profile, other places you're listed on the internet, and social media posts as well. And within that publicly available information, it's looking for things like clarity, specificity, credibility, and emotional resonance. Now, when I learned that it's looking for clarity, specificity, credibility, and emotional resonance, I thought, those are all the things that we're prioritizing to try to build trust with potential clients, even if we're not giving a thought to AI at all. So AI is thinking like a human and looking for those same variables that we emphasize on our website or our marketing materials that humans are also looking for. Imagine that. In a recent episode, I shared about marketing and how a lot of therapists are struggling with filling their practice right now in particular, is that I think we've been moving away from being able to fill your practice as a generalist therapist more and more and more. And that culturally, we are looking for a lot more specifics, some more niching, some more specialty, some more kind of separate identity to the therapist or the therapy practice that we choose as potential clients. So as therapists, when we market our practice for the modern day, we have to have this lens of like, what sets me apart, makes me unique, and how can I be clear about communicating that to potential clients? So marketing our therapy practice has been moving that way anyway, and then AI is just looking for those same things when it recommends a therapy practice. When I learned this, I thought, well, this is fantastic news, because it's not like marketing your practice to show up in an AI search query is this like totally brand new set of skills, like throw out all the things that were working before because we're going to do a whole new set of things. Instead, it looks more like doubling down on the things that are already working and just making sure we're fine-tuning or tweaking a couple things to make sure that those same items are extra clear for AI. Yes, the old school SEO strategies of like 10 years ago are pretty out the window of like keyword stuffing. If anyone, where you just find the right keyword that people are searching into Google and then type it over and over and over and over again in your website, that doesn't work. But I would argue that's for the better, because that's not giving any credibility to your practice. It's not giving helpful information about who you work with, how you operate, and how you're going to build trust with folks who are looking for a therapist. And AI is looking for a sense of credibility and specificity, meaning like, can we be specific about our unique specialties, our unique niches? And the more specific we can get, the more likely we are to show up in those AI search queries. So again, take this all with a grain of salt. These are the things I'm learning in real time. I don't have like extended data of like, I made these changes on my website and then I saw this many queries come through AI. None of that. But before we continue on, I'd like to thank Powbox for sponsoring today's episode. It wasn't until a couple years ago that I first learned that even with assigned BAA, Google Workspace and Microsoft 365 can't guarantee that 100% of the messages going in and out are HIPAA secure. So without a tool like Powbox operating on the back end, it's almost impossible to stay HIPAA secure unless you forego email altogether. Even if you exclusively use a secure portal to discuss protected health information with your clients, there's still going to be potential clients reaching out initially, and also some clients who will still try to email you because, I don't know, they forgot their password for their portal and they're trying to reach out. So with a tool like Powbox, you can guarantee that every single message is protected. Powbox is super easy to set up, and it's kind of a one and done situation. Like, you just spend a few minutes initially setting it up, and then it's just continuously quietly running in the background. Powbox offers a 14-day free trial to everybody, and they're offering a special discount to Private Practice Skills listeners. Just use coupon code SKILLS at checkout in order to receive $250 off your first year of Powbox. That's Powbox spelled Paubox. Thank you again to Powbox for sponsoring this episode. And now back to, how do I get AI to recommend my therapy practice? But with that said, given what I'm learning right now, here are some tips for some ways you can reasonably optimize your practice so that it can show up in AI search results. The first tip, and oh my goodness, this has been a marketing tip since I started this channel in 2018, find a niche. Find a specific niche. Find something specific about your practice that people are going to be searching about. These search queries are not just going to be, find me a good therapist in San Diego. That's not how people are asking for a therapist recommendation, and that's also not how AI is thinking either, right? It's going to be like, well, a good therapist in what way? Because a good therapist who can help your marriage recover from infidelity is not going to be the same good therapist who can help your child navigate ADHD, for example. So can you tell me more? Folks who are looking for therapists in each of those things are going to have something much more specific that they're asking AI, like, can you recommend a therapist to help me recover from an affair in my marriage? Or can you help me find a therapist who is recommended to help children with ADHD cope with blah, blah, blah. So if I haven't made my point over the last 7 years, now's a good time to catch on. Finding a niche, something specific that you would like to emphasize in your practice, will help you on so many levels, not just with AI search queries, but wherever it is that you're marketing your practice. I have so many videos covering this topic, so I will link to some videos below about finding your niche if you need some help with that. And then once you have your niche, the next tip is to be very clear and specific in how you're positioned around your niche. So it might not just be, I help adults with anxiety and depression, but we want to ask some questions to help you be more specific and clear about how you're positioned around this anxiety and depression niche. Here are a few questions you can answer to help you be a little bit more specific. Try to ask yourself who you help, what problem you solve, how you help them, and maybe how you're uniquely positioned to help them. Or in other words, like, what makes you different from any other therapist who might be helping with those same presenting issues. Let me repeat something. Being specific on these things not only helps you show up in those AI search queries, it also helps potential clients build trust with you. So win-win. Another tool you can use to optimize for showing up in AI search is to directly answer common client questions. And again, both humans and AI are helped by a similar structure. So whether you create an FAQ page, or you integrate some of these common questions in your homepage, or maybe even better, you create a separate blog post for each of these commonly asked questions, you can frame how you address these questions by naming the problem, then saying how you help, and then talking a little bit about what to expect. If you need a little help with identifying these frequently asked questions, a tip is that they often come up either in that initial contact, like via email, or in that initial phone consultation. So even things like, how many sessions should I expect to attend? Or how many sessions does my insurance cover? And even better if it's a question that's very specific to your niche. So for example, in my niche, a common category of question that I get asked is whether I'm kind of prescriptive about how somebody should live out their gender or sexuality given that I come from a Christian background? And of course, I have my answer that I give to that, but that would be a great question to answer directly on my website. And I do. Thank you. Maybe that's partly why I'm showing up in those AI search results. By answering these frequently asked questions, not only are you being super helpful in answering these common questions that people need the answers to, but you're also demonstrating to AI that you got your credibility, you got your thinking chops going, you're aware of the common questions, and you have a helpful answer to them. And that is part of what AI is factoring in when they're saying, like, this person seems like they might be helpful. Another simple tip that was true 10 years ago for SEO, and now it's true today for AI, is being consistent across the internet. Anywhere that your practice shows up, whether it's on your website, Psychology Today profile, Google Business profile, social media, anywhere you're listed online, keep everything as consistent as possible. Of course, that includes basics, like if, let's say, you have a nickname that you go by sometimes, you wouldn't want to sometimes have your full name, let's say, on your website, but then your nickname on your Psychology Today profile. Like, keep all of those details the same. Your credentials, if you have them listed in one spot, list them everywhere. And even the wording that you use for how you describe your specialty, your kind of like elevator, one-liner, hero message, make sure it's similar wording across all of these platforms. And that will just help validate that you are a real business. This is what you do because you say that this is what you do, not only in this one spot, but also here, 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 and here. And if you aren't listed all over the internet, you don't need to like go frantically make a bunch of listings everywhere, but there can be value in even just claiming a business on a particular space, like Google Business profile, or even just opening an Instagram page, never posting to it, but having your handle there with your website and then the consistent language and wording there as well. It just helps verify and legitimize the authenticity of your business in AI's eyes. I feel like a broken record because I definitely made this video 4 or 5 years ago when I did my series on SEO. We were validating our practices in Google's eyes, and now we're just using the exact same tips to validate our practices in AI's eyes. And another tip to optimize for showing up in AI search results is also feeling like a broken record from my old SEO series, but that is to be strategic about emphasizing a local geographic location. Even if your practice is purely virtual and you serve everyone across your state or maybe across multiple states, it is helpful to still emphasize your language in a specific geographic region. And then, of course, acknowledge, I have a hybrid practice. I also serve folks all over California virtually or however you do it. But to emphasize a local location speaks to how the algorithm still thinks about therapists and also speaks to how clients search for therapists, right? They might be looking for a local therapist in San Diego before they end up branching outside of San Diego if the options here aren't great. So to sum up all of what I just said, like just include one geographic location or city as your primary emphasis. Like I'm going to include San Diego all around my website where it feels natural, and AI will pick up on that. And the next tip is one I've given before in my SEO series as well, and that is to make all of your content readable and jargon-free. So this is a twofer. Readable meaning like you don't want like a giant block of text with no breaks. If you can just have like a header with a little bit of text and then another header with a little bit of text, maybe it's a problem and the solution or a category and the description so that it flows easily on the page and is easy to read, that's a win. And then also avoiding jargon, making your writing flow like how you naturally speak without a bunch of therapist jargon is also going to win both for real humans, potential clients looking at your website and deciding if they want to work with you, and AI looking at your website and seeing if it should recommend your practice for this real human who's asking them for a recommendation. And the last tip for AI that does veer a little bit away from some of my recommendations for SEO in the past is to be very clear about your credentials. This doesn't need to be where you lead from. You don't need to have all of your training at the top of every page, but AI is trying to figure out if it should trust you as a credentialed person qualified to do the work that you claim to do. And so whatever your training is, your credentials, certainly your licensure, or if you're pre-licensed, details about that, and perhaps where you completed your, highest level of training, that can just authenticate in AI's eyes that you are qualified, you're credentialed to do this therapy work, which obviously is so important. So I hope I've emphasized that if you follow these tools, not only will it be helpful to market your practice via AI, but even if AI never recommends you, the content that you've put out there on the internet via your website, or maybe it's on your Psychology Today profile or on your social media, wherever you are on the internet, it's going to help potential clients find you and build trust with you. And bonus, we would love for AI to recommend your practice when you are a great fit for whoever's doing their search query. Now, if you heard all this and you're thinking like, oh my gosh, I still feel overwhelmed, I don't know where to start, I have 2 tips for directions you could go next. 1, open ChatGPT or your preferred AI and ask for it to recommend a therapy practice listing out some aspects of your niche and see if your practice shows up. Sometimes it'll show one practice that's not your practice, but then you can ask it to list out maybe 3 or 5 more, see if yours shows up. If it's not showing up, then you can do a search query and include your practice name. So my practice name is Affirming Christian Counseling. You can then ask ChatGPT a question like, can you show me some ways to optimize Affirming Christian Counseling's online presence so that it's more likely to get recommended in AI search results? You could perhaps give it some information about your niche so that you can clarify what kinds of queries you'd like to be getting recommended for, and it will give you some tips. It'll tell you what to do. So if you do nothing else, you can always do that and just follow the instructions. They may not be perfect, but they're going to kind of tip the needle in the right direction and probably make it more likely that you'll show up than if you didn't follow any of those tips. Or if you're just feeling overwhelmed by the idea of like writing out stuff on your website in general and like, how do I actually write things down in a way that does help build trust and offer credibility and specificity and all of these things, and you get stuck on that writing process for your website? Well, I'm so glad you're here because I'm about to release a brand new training during Black Friday that's all about how to overhaul your website copy in a weekend. Whether you are starting from scratch, you've never had a website before, you're starting a new website from scratch, or if you want to kind of tweak your existing wording on your website, this training is for you. I'm going to have it priced at a very affordable price point and more details to follow. So stay tuned for a Black Friday deal. So if you're not subscribed to my email newsletter, I'll put a spot below where you can sign up for that and stay tuned. And I'll also say something in next week's video so you know it's coming. Well, I hope this was helpful for you. Even if you're totally allergic to AI, I think this is so valuable. And again, even if we just threw AI away from your marketing strategy, these tips still stand as great marketing tips, regardless of whether you want to be recommended by AI. But the reality is, like, I've got clients finding me on AI. Even though I'm not trying to use AI. So I think it's good to be informed, even if we kind of leave some of these options on the table, to know like this is here and it's available to you if you ever want to leverage it. Well, I hope this episode was helpful to you, whether you're totally allergic to AI like me, or maybe you're all in on AI and you just need to know what the tips are so that you can make it happen. I hope this was a helpful kind of launch pad to spring from. Well, I hope this was empowering to you. For me, when I learned that some of the tools to optimize for showing up in recommended results from AI are basically the same tools that have been working for SEO for quite a while, I got real excited because SEO is my jam and it's just expanding. It's maybe a way of thinking of it is like AI is just a new category of search engine with a smarter brain, but it's looking for a lot of the same things. and we can lean into that. It's possible. And until next time, from one therapist to another, I wish you well.